Welcome back to the Magic Mirror. This is Joe. Today I would like to talk about ultra low resolution digital cameras. Like, for instance, this little knockoff of a GoPro action camera. This is called an Ape Man, and the Ape Man camera is what I call the monkey cam for obvious reasons. But the thing about these cameras, these are very similar to, in a conceptual way, to the old point-and-shoot film cameras of a bygone era. One example that I might point out is right over here is this Ensco 120 format box camera. And if I could get out of my frame, I would love to be able to show it to you, but I can't. But that kind of a camera had one shutter speed, and it had one aperture, and it used 120 film, and it really relied upon the dynamic range of the film and the processing to achieve a wide enough latitude that it could produce images in a wide variety of lighting conditions, considering also, of course, that the images were going to be printed from negatives, usually contact printed from negatives onto photographic paper back in the era of roughly prior to World War II, let's say. But this kind of a camera is the equivalent of those old box cameras of yesteryear. This is quite a bit smaller than that camera, and it is a black plastic kind of a structure, a little rectangular solid shape, and it has a kind of a texture to it. Has a nice feel to it. It has a screen on the back that is about the same size as a 35mm film frame. And so there is this big orange button here you press, and that turns the camera on. A couple blue lights come on, and then the camera comes on. It has essentially two shooting modes. It has video mode that shoots in 1080p, and then it also has a still photo mode. And as far as the colors, it'll shoot color mode, it'll shoot black and white, and it'll shoot a sepia mode, and I actually currently have it set to this sepia mode. So essentially, when you first turn it on, you're in the video mode, and if you hit the power button once again, you go to the still photo mode, and this is a 14 megapixel sensor at its highest resolution. And basically there's a shutter button right on top, and you just sit there and go like that, and you just take a picture. The utility of this camera, I want to talk about a little bit, but let's talk about the features and some of the limitations. So feature-wise, it's a fixed focus, fixed angle of view, fisheye type lens right here. And the fisheye lens does stick out somewhat from the body a little bit. And the glass itself, the front element, sticks out above this little lens housing, so it is possible if you set this down on some surface you could perhaps scratch the lens, but thus far that has not happened to me. It's a nice rubbery feeling body, and I like the feel of it. There is, of course, the shutter button on the top here. There are two buttons on the side for toggling through your playback pictures, and there is a micro SD card slot on this side, and there is a USB connector for charging and another USB type of connector for connecting it to a computer if you want to do that directly. So essentially very few features. It's auto exposure. You can kind of tell it to expose a little bit more, a little bit less, kind of like a exposure compensation mode, but pretty much everything is auto. Now, the thing that I really love about this, several things. First of all, I like the form factor. This little cube shape, you can literally palm it in your hand like that or whatever. It's really small. And so you can kind of hold it like that and just sort of like put one of your fingers on that shutter button and just take a picture like that. So you can walk around. It becomes a very candid type of street photography camera as a still camera. The thing about these, though, is they weren't originally intended to be still photo cameras. Their primary usage is as an action camera for shooting video. That's their purpose. And this one came with a waterproof housing and all kinds of accessories that are GoPro compatible for mounting on different things. But I really find this auxiliary still photo mode is very cool. It's 14 megapixel, it's a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it's not that high a resolution, but it's certainly good enough to get you 4:6 prints, for instance. But I really love it because you can sit there and walk around with it and just kind of capture images like that very surreptitiously, even less surreptitiously than with your smartphone, because it's smaller than a smartphone. You can literally palm it in your hand and hardly anybody's going to see it. And of course, it's pretty rugged, I think. I have four batteries total with a charger, so plenty of battery capacity, no problem there. And when I transfer the footage to my computer, I usually just pop out the micro SD card and pop that through an adapter into my computer directly. So when you toggle through next, you have playback, and these buttons you can toggle through the playback and look at all the old pictures that you shot. And then if you hit this button one more time, you go to the menus, and you can use these two buttons on the side to pop through all the menus. Now, there has been an awful lot of ink wasted on these discussions over the last few years and decades about the differences between film-based imaging and electronic or digital-based imaging. And one of the things that both film and digital have in common is they have a required dependency on an industrial base to manufacture either integrated circuits, memory chips, digital camera sensors, color screens and that kind of thing, or in the case of film, an industrial basis for manufacturing film emulsion, right? So really the only kind of totally self-sufficient photography that there is if you're doing wet plate collodion, coating your own plates with your own homemade emulsions. Everything else beyond that is dependent upon an industrial basis. So in that regards, I think that digital photography and film photography are very similar. And if you think about this camera right over here, this Ensco box camera, it was manufactured by an industrial company, Ensco, which is, I believe, was AGFA's North American subdivision. And the user didn't build that camera themselves, they bought it, and the film they had to buy from the drugstore or whatever, and the film they had to get processed. Usually many people who had this kind of camera relied upon commercial processing labs. So in that sense, it was very much dependent upon an external technological infrastructure. And that's what I find interesting about this film versus digital debate, is in that regard they're very similar. So I look upon this as kind of the equivalent of a point-and-shoot film camera. That's kind of what I like to do with this, treat it like that. I take these images, I will transfer the card to my computer, I will do a little post-processing or whatever, and I can transfer those photos to my local photo lab and get real color prints, like 4:6 prints, which is roughly the same kind of size picture that you might have expected out of a box camera like that back in the day. Yeah, conceptually, as far as the use of this camera, it really is like a box camera, a film box camera. The real difference, I think, is a memory card of any capacity, considering these 14 megapixel images here, you're going to be able to shoot thousands of images before you fill up the card. And so the real limitation is really ends up being the batteries, which is why I carry a few extras. But this little camera, I would like to start using more. I've shot some action-style videos with this camera in the past. I go on my motor scooter and things like that. The fisheye optical angle of view does take some getting used to, and it's not ideally suited for every subject matter. But having said that, I still believe that it is an interesting kind of camera that you could use to take these images that aren't going to stand up to the scrutiny of the state-of-the-art in digital imaging. It's going to be a little grainy or noisy in lower light. It's going to have limited focus capability, lower ISO sensitivity. It's going to have that fisheye effect. There is limitations on the shutter speed, so sometimes you can get motion blur, even in bright daylight, when you press the shutter button, if you move the camera too quickly right afterwards. because there's a little delay. So all of these things conspire to make it a little bit of a challenge, but it's very similar in some regards. The process is to using one of these box cameras back in the old days when you also didn't really have a real viewfinder and you didn't really know what you were going to get until you got your pictures back from the drugstore. As far as the usage of this camera, it has a lot of similarities to these old box cameras. And so I'm going to try to be using this more and more to take still photos and see if I can get these little prints made at my local photo lab, these RA4 4x6 prints, and see how they hold up. That's what I'm interested in doing. Well, this is just a little photographic experiment that I'm going to be working with, and I hope you guys are interested in following along with me as I share my results. This is a new series, the Magic Mirror series, and yes, I am trapped in a magic mirror, and it's tough living in here. And you know, there's times when I have to have the mirror flip down so I can just go to sleep. And times like this, it's exciting to be able to talk to you through the medium of the magic mirror. Well, guys, until next time, stay creative and have yourselves a great day.